Hi, I'm Frank Schallenberger. I'm a medical doctor. I've been treating and seeing patients since 1973. That's a long time. Since then, I've learned a lot about how to make people feel better, how to treat the various diseases they end up with. And I have to say, it's really rewarding. But that's not my main passion. My primary passion is not in patching up sick people. My primary passion is preventing those people from ever getting sick in the first place. So that's what I'm going to talk to you about over the next 5 videos. This video series is entitled Disease is Optional. You can opt out if you want to. And that's what we're going to discuss. We're going to discuss how you can opt out from ever getting sick again. It all has to do with mitochondria. We're going to talk a little bit about mitochondria in just a second here. So hang with me and let's get going. Okay, how can you possibly say disease is optional? Now, most people think it's more or less inevitable. I could say that because I know what's causing it. What's causing it is decreased mitochondrial function. Literally, you can go to PubMed, which is the National Library of Medicine database. You can look up any disease you want to, and you will find out that the bottom line on that disease, the thing that really caused that disease, is poor mitochondrial function. Okay, so what the heck are mitochondria and what am I talking about anyway? It has to do with oxygen. All that oxygen that we breathe in, now you have to admit that's the most critical thing you do every day is breathe, right? But you're breathing in oxygen. What's that oxygen doing? Basically, it's an energy supply. It's kind of like our gasoline. All that oxygen I'm breathing in, it's a very high energy molecule. Oxygen explodes, it starts fires. So it's got a lot of energy packed in there. It's going to find its way into my cells. And in my cells, it's going to find a mitochondria and get into that mitochondria. And in the mitochondria, it's a special part of the cell. In one of those mitochondria, the miracle of life is that the mitochondria is able to extract the energy from oxygen, harness that energy, and then the cell can use that energy to do all the various things it does. If it's a brain cell or kidney cell or an immune cell or whatever the cell is, chartered to do, it needs energy to do that. And the mitochondria supply the energy. Roughly half of your cells are made up out of mitochondria. So you can kind of think of cells as divided into two compartments, if you will. One compartment would be the mitochondria, the energy producing part of the cell. The other part would be the part of the cell that actually does stuff. That would be the nucleus and the ribosomes and all the thing makes proteins. And, all these cells have different functions. So the cells do things. So in essence, you got a part of the cell that generates the energy, gives it to the other part of the cell that can use that energy to do what it's going to do. And here's the problem. As we get older, as we get more toxic, if we have bad lifestyle choices, if we don't sleep well, if we don't eat well, if we don't get enough water, on and on and on, and just getting older, all of those factors cause mitochondria to become less efficient. So that I'm breathing in the oxygen, it's going down into my mitochondria, but my mitochondria are just not optimally processing it. It's really similar to a car engine where the engine's out of tune. It's getting gasoline in there, but it doesn't know what to do with the gasoline. It's not very efficient. That's what we become like. So that's the basis of all disease. If you go to the Library of Medicine called PubMed website, you can search any disease you want to, and you can find out the bottom line on each and every one of these diseases is poor mitochondrial function. So the secret to being disease-free, the secret to opting out of ever getting a disease is to maintain a youthful mitochondrial function as you're getting older. And that's what this series is going to be all about. In this series, in this first part of the series, I'm just going to talk to you about mitochondria and what they are. So you already have a pretty good idea of what they do and how they process the oxygen. So what I want you to understand is that your mitochondrial function starts to decline over time. That's the bad news. The good news is we can measure it and determine if it's declined. If it has, the other part of the good news is we can actually treat it and optimize it so that there's no reason you can't get to be a really old person in your 80s, 90s, and maybe beyond and still have youthful mitochondrial function. And to the degree that you can do that, no disease, fully functional, fully energetic, pretty much able to do anything you want, even into your 80s, 90s, and perhaps beyond. So we're going to talk about in this series how mitochondria work and why they determine and how they determine your chance of disease. We're going to look a little bit at mitochondrial genetics and the role they play. We're going to look at how we actually become like flashlights as we age. In other words, you got a good flashlight. After a while, it starts going bad because the battery's bad. The flashlight actually works quite well, but the battery's going bad. The energy source is going bad, and so the flashlight doesn't work as well. You see, that's what we're like. Like I said, you have two parts to your cell. You got the mitochondrial part that makes the energy. Then you've got the other part of the cell that actually does stuff. That part of the cell uses that energy to do whatever it's going to do. Very similar to a flashlight. And the interesting thing is that even in old people, say in their 70s and 80s, the ability for the cell to do what it does remains intact for the most part. The problem is not that the cells can't do what they used to do as a younger person. The problem is they're not getting enough energy, and they become like a flashlight that's going bad. Throw in a new battery, bingo. You've got a cell that's behaving just like it did when you were young. So that's what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about how to get those mitochondria to operate like a young person, giving plenty of energy to your cells so that your cells can operate like a young person and get you to be fully functional and, more importantly, prevent all disease, because all disease stems from inefficient mitochondrial function. So, bottom line, you have to match your mitochondrial genetics to your lifestyle. So some of us have great mitochondrial genetics, some of us not such great mitochondrial genetics, and there's different aspects to that. We're going to learn about that. But basically the secret is determine your mitochondrial genetics and then match your lifestyle to that, and then bingo, marry those two. You're going to live a long time. You're not going to get sick. You're going to be fully functional. And to the degree that you can do that, you're going to have the same risk for getting chronic disease as a young person has. Basically negligible. When was the last time you heard of a under 40-year-old getting a chronic disease? Yeah, I know it can happen. Some younger people get cancer. I got that. But it's not common. It's pretty unusual. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to talk about how to get your mitochondria to be so functional that the chance of you getting disease is pretty darn slim. So hang on with me, and let's get into the rest of the series and move on into part 2.